Good afternoon, fellow Houstonians and others around the regions. Hopefully you are staying warm and not too affected. I sound like a news anchor. Not too affected by the winter weather. So this has nothing to do with the weather. But it does have to do with something that is also in the cold, which is figure skating. As a current figure skater and former figure skater, I, of course, was keen on seeing what Finding Her Edge was all about after Netflix canceled. And full disclaimer, if you don't want spoilers for either of Spinning Out or Finding Her Edge, don't watch this, right? Because I'm about to discuss the show, Finding Her Edge, that's new on Netflix. So anyways, Netflix decided to cancel Spinning Out. Spinning Out is actually, I attribute it to being the reason that I started figure skating again, 18 years after I had quote-unquote retired at the very young age of almost 11. So anyway, the point is, for me, Spinning Out, before I get into Spinning Out, so Finding Her Edge, I didn't know what to expect, but I was also like, it's a figure skating show, and we don't really get that many things that we can relate to, in my opinion, so I was interested regardless, I knew I was going to watch it. But the way I watch shows is quite unconventional, and people will hate, and that's fine. But this is just kind of how my brain works. When it comes to shows and movies, I have to skim through it. Kind of like when you're, reading a passage and you have to skim through the passage to be able to determine context clues or main key points. That's exactly what I do. So for this show, I had already seen the trailer. I already had an understanding kind of what it was about. So I didn't really do that. I just went straight into it, and I basically skimmed through the second to last and last episode, and I got my baseline from that. I was like, this is very much so not Spinning Out by any caliber. And again, it's completely fine. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is terrible, whatever. That's not the point of this, because trust me, those short reel films or reel shorts, those would have me obsessed. I was addicted. I was like, okay, I need to go and watch the rest of this film. And I'd be watching it on Dailymotion and some buffering system that would take forever. So it's not about, so I already knew at baseline, okay, I can't compare this to Spinning Out. It's on a very different tier. Now I want to get into the meat and potatoes, right? So regarding plot, now this is where I felt like I really didn't understand the plot. The biggest thing I didn't get was, what was the intention of Adriana? She had been off ice for 2 years, and then suddenly, her sister, can't skate, and she needs to carry the family name. So she gets back on the ice, gets paired with Brayden, and, they have chemistry. There's no doubt to me that they had chemistry. I know a lot of people commented and said her and Freddie had no chemistry. I don't even feel like I knew what was going on between them, because I felt like it was in this show, it felt like on and off switches between the intimacy meaning chemistry between people. Because I felt like everyone was with everyone, which I mean, to a tier, it kind of does display when you're in a smaller environment and you're trying to date people that you can relate to. I guess that can happen. But I was just the whole point that I liked in Spinning Out, that, again, not comparing production quality, budget, because you can make some really good films on low budget. That's completely a fact, in my opinion. So in this show, I felt like we built a really good relationship between Adriana and Brayden. And then suddenly, it's Freddie almost loses you could say he could be paralyzed, right? Because he could have injured his spinal cord and from that fall. And so then, it's a light bulb goes off in her mind, and she's like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm with Freddie, and whatever, they reconcile. But the push and pull, I mean, if that was kind of the goal of the director, I didn't really get it. Because, then her and Freddie she's like, oh, she says her and Brayden weren't a thing, or, it was just all for publicity. But I'm like, girl, you were feeling Brayden when you were at that club. Let's be real. I know he has this whole temper tantrum after, and I'm like, girl, also, there are a lot of lessons here, right? So you could justify that there wasn't a good transition or rationale for why she went back to Freddie, outside of the fact that he almost loses his life. However, it could also be she feels like she didn't get to complete a chapter, but it also could be a reason that, you know, like, focus on what you have going for you in the present, right? Because I think that's a lesson for all of us. We always want to revisit these people from our past because we only remember the good from those people. And again, Freddie was taken away from her not by choice, not because they hated each other. She didn't really have a choice. And so I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, girl, if you're gonna build all this tension and chemistry with this other guy, and then just be like, all right, I don't like you now, it's all like it's a fluke or it's all just for show. I'm like, okay, now I'm very confused because it just, to me, I didn't get that the flow. And that was a big thing that I noticed in the show, where I felt like pieces were just kind of put together, and you were like, wait, what prompted her to have this like visceral reaction where she just like pushes away Brayden? And I thought Brayden was actually a decent character. He was douchey and kind of annoying, but then he like committed to what he said. He actually did what he said, which I thought was very commendable. And he was also a good sport. Yes, he had his tantrums and stuff, but I felt like they were completely valid. I also felt like she could have just waited to act on her feelings if that was really what she wanted to do, or pursue Freddie. Like, she could have had an open and honest conversation with Brayden. Yes, he might have been a little hothead about it, but her way of going about it, I guess it was human. But it was so confusing. Also, I also thought that Brayden and Adriana did not place and were not, and this might have been a issue on the way I viewed it, but I thought that they did not qualify for Worlds, but then they were then competing because they weren't first or second. So I didn't really understand how they were still competing. And then she was like, yes, this is all about figure skating. I'm like, girl, we keep talking about figure skating, but all I see y'all doing is dancing in a barn, which I understand, like, you need to get your choreo as pairs figure skaters, but like, I felt like that barn was making things a little too intimate. I didn't feel the seriousness of the sport, right? And that's the thing. I do think there was underlying messages that make sense. Like, as an athlete, you know, you might have ulterior motives. You have to put on a show. You have to make it look. It's just like when you're trying to sell a film or a music video, right? You got to convince people that you're actually together, even on and off screen. You know, there's that speculation, which is what's going to intrigue the viewer to want to watch the movie, or in this case, want to follow this pair, because they're on and off ice, right? So I just felt like there was a lot of things that were very gray area, or just didn't really flow for me. And then the thing I wanted to mention about Spinning Out that I really, really liked, aside, not comparing it to this, because you can't, I felt like in Spinning Out, there was true portrayal of figure skating. In Finding Her Edge, like, you're very prone to injury, knock on wood for all figure skaters, but like, it's very scary, right? You know, you're doing something, you're on knives, like, you're skating on knives, on ice, which is slippery. So, but the way they portrayed the injuries was just a little, I don't know, it didn't flow for me in Finding Her Edge, not Cutting Edge. But yes, I can't believe I've been talking about this for like 8 minutes, but in Spinning Out, because I just love that show, right? It really did such a good job of incorporating mental health in terms of bipolar, and how, you know, you hold that and you're so embarrassed, like, you don't want other people to find out. And it also showed you like the dynamics of being on the medication, how it regulates you, but also the cons of it, and also not being on it, what it allowed for the character to be able to do. Again, not everything about it was true, but it just was embedded in such a, like, I felt like it was a lot more realistic, right? There was a lot going on in that show, but it had a lot of layers. It was dark. And also, the love triangle in that show made so much more sense to me, because it's not like ultimately, she chooses in Spinning Out, she chooses Justin because, I mean, he's her partner, and like, obviously they have chemistry and all that too. However, it's not like she doesn't feel remorse or just like turns herself off to the other guy that she's also pursuing. Like, in Finding Her Edge, I keep saying Cutting Edge, in Finding Her Edge, it's just very abrupt. But yeah, anyway, that's my long spiel about this show. I still watched it and I still liked aspects of it, but it wasn't Spinning Out season 2, and I was disappointed about that. But also, last thought, Netflix does this thing where it's like they won't allow a screenplay unless there's a huge cliffhanger at the end of the season. I don't know why that's a thing, but it's been happening a lot. And it's really not that great if it happens at every single show. Every season ends on a cliffhanger. What's up with that?